Hello and welcome to the Wild Precious Lives podcast. I'm your host, Gin McEnany, and tonight I am interviewing the lovely Helen Disler from Farming Secrets. Helen has a great story about how she was educated as a teacher. She worked in rural Australia and ended up having this incredible passion to help farmers particularly, teach them about farming their land without chemicals or without the use of such awful chemicals that we find around today. Helen and her husband Hugo have started this business, and they're really making an incredible difference with farmers who realise that this is not the way to go with all these chemicals, and they've been seeing some awful, with their own families, some awful things that have been happening from the use of chemicals. So Helen's got a real passion to educate people about this, and a lovely story and some great tips for us as suburban dwellers of what we can do to sort of make sure we know where our food is coming from too. So please join me with this lovely episode, and I'll chat to Helen Disler from Farming Secrets. Helen Disler, thank you for joining us on the Wild Precious Lives podcast.
It's my pleasure. Very, very much my pleasure, Jen. Thank you for inviting me on it. I'm very excited about what you do.
Thank you. Well, likewise. And I've learnt about you and your farming practices through a mutual friend of ours, Ray Milladoni, and I was fascinated by what you're doing, what you and Hugo are doing. So before we get into the Farming Secrets side of it, though, I'd love to know a bit about your journey and how, did you grow up on a farm, or how did you get interested in the whole farming side of things?
I think as a little girl, I always thought I'd marry a farmer. We had an uncle who had a farm, so I've always liked rural life, and I became a primary school teacher, and my first post was near the Grampians. The 1967 drought, it was a very quick introduction to country living, where the kids were bringing water to school every day, and it was the drovers were on the road with very sad-looking sheep in particular, looking for any feed. So it was a rude awakening to rural life, and I guess I've just always been fascinated with people who are living that lifestyle, and really we see them as the backbone of the community. It's a noble profession, and I got very interested in supporting farmers when I married Hugo, who did have a farm, and he did grow up as a farmer, and we now live on 4 acres.
So you got your farmer in the end.
I got my farmer in the end, but not quite the farmer I was thinking I'd be with, but he knew a lot about farming, and he actually ran a farm produce store.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so I was teaching. I was a primary school teacher. I met Hugo, and I still wanted to study, and I couldn't fit the schedule in the end. So Hugo said, well, come and work with me. So then I met a lot of farmers, and the thing that really struck me, Jen, was we used to do stock takes, and this is back in the 70s. And Hugo was selling chemicals. That was sort of what farmers did, and a lot hasn't changed for people, but I was horrified. I said, Hugo, there was one with a skull and crossbones on it, would you believe? And it said poison. And I said, what's this here for? And Hugo said, oh, the farmers use it on the orchards. And I said, but we eat that. And Hugo said, yes. And I said, we can't keep selling this sort of product. So it was quite hard to find products that were soil friendly in those days, but we did find a mineral company in Adelaide, Blood and Bone. Then we found fish and seaweed. We started stocking all these things, and we had customers coming in. Their fathers were having heart attacks. They were sick. It was really a terrible story to hear farmers actually being affected by the chemicals they were using. So it became our passion to find alternatives. And so we actually sold the company after stocking the friendly products, and we we bought a company that manufactured and sold fish and seaweed fertilisers and stock supplements, and started going to field days. So we met probably thousands of farmers, I'd say, over the 10 years, and a lot thought we were selling magic bullets, but a lot were actually interested. And a lot was starting to change. And so we learned a lot from the farmers on what they were doing to change their farming and becoming what you'd call today regenerative. So I said to Hugo, these farmers, we're still not, I really wanted to make a difference in the world while I'm here. So we started filming. And so we sold the company that was manufacturing and just took a huge leap of faith and started filming farmers farming without chemicals. Successful farmers. And a lot had changed because they'd been sick. And we started filming experts, visiting experts who talked about the soil and different types of farming. So here we are. We started a club and shared these videos with members, and we have a lot of blogs on our post, Farming Secrets. And yeah, that's what we do. We love it.
So first of all, I'm so impressed that you realised this back in the 70s and you wanted to make a change, because back then people just accepted things for what they were, and
yes,
you know,
exactly.
you know, if they're using that, it must be okay to use. But you obviously saw that something wasn't happy. You didn't like that, but then you got the proof, the evidence of farmers coming in and being affected by it.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and it was heartbreaking, really.
Oh, I can imagine. And then when you started trying to peddle your snake oil, what sort of, has that taken a long time to get through to farmers who, you know, are looking for cost effective options as well and are used to doing things a certain way? Was it really hard to break through that barrier?
It was hard, but there was just a little crack. But, you know, the internet wasn't really very well established either, and farmers were the last to get good reception online and still have quite difficulty with their access to the internet. That's why we put everything on videos and things. But yeah, there is still a lot of resistance, and we actually have one of Hugo's nieces has married a farmer, and he just doesn't believe that you can farm without chemicals still.
Yeah.
So you go from that extreme right across the farmers who've made the change and the farmers who are really hungry to know what to do, because as you can imagine, they're in small communities, and the worst thing is in a small community, the farmers that are making change do not have neat-looking farms quite often. Yeah. And so they have weeds and things, so they don't look good in the community. And it's hard because most communities are small, and the people who are selling the chemicals are also in the pub, the football club. So they're very isolated if they don't go down that track, and also if they don't succeed.
Wow, that's a real barrier, isn't it? Like that
huge.
Whole community thing.
Yeah.
So are you finding then that you're maybe getting more uptake from young farmers who are not, you know, second or third, fourth generation farmers, but they're coming into it fresh?
It now is a lot of young farmers. A lot of farmers are starting, the younger ones are coming back to the farms, you know, because they left, because they saw it's really hard farming with chemicals and coming in. And a lot of the older farmers say they don't want the children on the farm because of the chemicals. But now the younger ones, particularly I think through permaculture and community action, you know, like farmers markets and things, people are starting to see that it's a really sensible move, and it's really exciting because your age group look for what's in their food. There's a huge awareness now, and that's the consumer-led change for a lot of farmers. Is the demand is there. The organic movement is the quickest agricultural movement now in Australia, you know, which it's still small, but yeah, it's massive change.
That's great to see that it's moving so quickly, and it must be refreshing for you to see that that all of this is starting to really take you know, get a bit of speed up now.
Yeah, I know. It is really wonderful, you know, because we really were viewed as, well, probably stretching the limit of the most farmers to talk about what we talked about. And even if they understood and want to change, they just couldn't quite make that step across. So we just talked to the ones who could, and some of them are our biggest supporters now. You know, it's lovely.
So I love the idea that you thought, let's video this. So the idea was so you could help other farmers through,
yes,
like to make it easy by showing them this is what it is like in action.
exactly. And we also started a fast track series of DVDs with like dairy, grazing, a whole lot of different types of farming where people could get on board and then they'd get a consult with that farmer. So we're certainly not the experts. We know a huge amount, but we use people who are actually out there doing it. And so that's what we've done. But the other thing that we did then, Jen, was we still couldn't, being the teacher, I started putting courses online. And we're very fortunate to start with Dr. Elaine Ingham, who's very well known for her soil knowledge. And then we filmed Jerry Brunetti, who's an animal nutritionist, who's unfortunately died, but we do have a course ready to go up online with him.
Wow.
And we have a microscope course online.
Yeah.
And when a farmer starts getting really fascinated with their soil, which is what you have to know if you want to really be successful with your farming, you need to know you've got a soil that's alive. People get very interested in looking at their soil under a microscope, and they're just blown away. It's a totally different world, and it's wonderful.
That sounds incredible. And it sounds like you've done a lot of travel with this, and you've interviewed, as you said, some real experts in the field. So there's a lot of kudos there. So whereabouts has this job taken you and Hugo? Not just around rural Australia.
We've only been across to America, actually. We went to, we actually were going to a conference to learn more about marketing. And so then we went and visited a farmer who was teaching basically the Spanish workers on the farms in California to farm organically. And he was brilliant. He was his son of a dentist, and his father was very friendly with Arden Anderson, who we've just finished filming. And he's a medical doctor as well as an agriculturalist. He knows his stuff. He's very, very, very concerned about what he's seeing coming through with his health clinic, which is he's seen the effect of pesticides, particularly glyphosate, Roundup, and GM, which is a lot of allergies are coming up and a lot of effect on deformities and stillbirths, and really very disturbing trend that he's seen. So I got carried away then. But anyway, he was friendly with this man who was also concerned about nutrition, and so he was teaching the farmers over there, but not the farmers, not the big farmers, all their farmhands. And so he was actually, if someone didn't believe in organics, he would lend them some land that was organic to grow their strawberries and things. And once they got to see the difference growing without the chemicals, it was very easy to convert them over. And I thought that was a really smart idea.
That's a great idea.
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah. And I know some of the Americans are really doing some wonderful stuff with that regenerative farming over there as well.
Oh, yes, yeah. But we're doing some very good work here.
We are. So tell us a bit about some of the good stuff. Well, first of all, before we go into the good work, just so we know, so you were talking about deformities and that kind of stuff. How do these chemicals affect us, the people who are buying them and just eating them day to day? Like we all know Roundup is like a absolute no, but how are the effects showing in the people who are buying them from the supermarkets?
Well, quoting from Dr. Anderson, he is saying that there's a lot of allergies, there's a lot of autism, and it's basically because once you put Roundup down, it stops like in a healthy soil, you've got the roots, but you've got this mycorrhizal fungi that can go for kilometres collecting nutrients. The plant gives them the sugars, they take back the vitamins and things back through the minerals through the soil. And what the Roundup does, it stops that natural functioning in the soil. So you're not getting this massive amount of nutrients being collected and fed back into the plants. So you actually don't have the nutrients in the plant to start with. And the Roundup in particular stops the Shikimate pathway in the body, which also stops you, and I'm quoting him because I'm not an expert, it stops the functioning of the body absorbing the gut bacteria get affected. So if you don't have a balanced gut, you're just like the plant, you can't actually take up all the nutrients. So it's really worrying, and it's very important that people actually learn to understand probably just the basics, and we really encourage people to know where the food comes from and who grew it.
And I think that's the most important thing that we often just take for granted. We don't look into that enough. And if we're shopping at the big chain supermarkets, we don't look into what they're doing. We're just putting our trust in them. And I think that's, as a consumer, we need to become more aware and start questioning these things.
Yeah, look, if people listening to this, if you only made the choice to start supporting the farmer and saying, well, I don't want to buy anything that's not organic, the farmer there'll be more and more farmers starting to produce that type of food, and we need to support them. I mean, apart from supporting yourself by looking after your body, it's very, very important. And I hadn't realised quite how important it was until you really start looking into it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm very concerned. I've got 2 grandchildren, and they're very aware that they've got to choose food that's, well, as much as they can. And people say it's expensive to buy organic, but it's very expensive not to buy organic because of the damage you are actually doing to your body.
The long-term health, that's right. Where can we start? Because I know there are co-ops that you can look at, there's farmers markets. Where can you give us some examples of some ways to go about this?
Right. Well, what I would be doing is starting to look at how you can grow stuff yourself.
Perfect. Yeah.
Right. So you really know where your food's coming from. And there's a lot of, like we've got kale growing and silver beet, perpetual silver beet, parsnips. There's a lot that just grows pretty easily. So I would look at that to start with.
Yeah, and I do that as well. I've just started, and you don't have to have a green thumb. I've had a bit of luck, and then I've learnt over the last couple of years that we've had a place, and I've actually found I'm really enjoying it. And some things you just go, well, I won't try that again, or I'll Google it and find out that I just needed a little bit more of this. But it's not that high maintenance to do. It's actually not that difficult. And if you're living in a flat, you can put things in windowsills, like do your parsley and your coriander and basil on the windowsill. So there's no excuse really.
Not really. And we actually think it's wonderful. At one stage I was encouraging, we had a friend who supplied plants to offices like the one you've got in the back, but we said to him, why don't you start selling edible plants? And I know that is happening in some offices. So it's another thing that if people are going to work every day, encourage your employers to put in edible plants. It's a lot of fun.
Great idea. I love it. Yeah. And what we do at our office too is I always have an abundance of whatever I've got going at that moment. So at the moment it's a heap of parsley. So I'll bring a heap in and I'll give it to people in bags, or I'll say I'll put it. We've got a big community office, so I'll put it on the desk in the lunchroom and just tell people, on the messages that there's extra stuff there. So we find a lot of people, if they're growing stuff, will bring it in, which I think is really good.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And there's a lot more of that too. And if you go online, you can find where there's free fruit and vegetables. People are starting to find out where the trees are. And a lot of people, believe it or not, don't want to pick their fruit and are quite happy for people to come in. And I don't know the websites offhand, but I can certainly find them for people.
Yes, please. If you can find them, and I'll put them in the show notes, because that's such a good idea.
It's great. It's really great,
Yeah.
So I think there's quite a lot happening, particularly, once again, with you young people.
Thank you for including me in that.
Oh, well, I think there's a bit of a marked difference here. But there's a lot of that sharing going on, and it's just great.
There's even, I think they've made it into an app now. It's where you can, if you want to compost, but you live in a flat or you haven't got a compost bin, there's 3,000 people who have put their composting where they are, and you can take the scraps down to their compost bin as well. So it's not just the local government.
I haven't heard of that.
Yeah,
that's great.
I'll put the link in that too. But moving on from that then, so growing your own stuff is a great way to start. Then moving on from that, what are our other options?
And I'll just add to growing your
Oh,
own.
yeah.
When we had the produce store, we also had a nursery, and we used to sell herbs and things. We did get people coming in, believe it or not, who wanted to know whether they needed to water their plants when they got home. And no, this is true. I'm
Wow.
not making it up. So if you know that you need to water plants, you won't fail. Like so have a go, like
That's the
Jen
key to
has.
keeping them alive.
Strategic key point. And don't worry about weeds. Keep your ground covered.
Yeah.
That's really important because just like you and me, we don't like being left out in the boiling sun and things like that. So people go nuts over getting rid of weeds. The weeds are there to bring the minerals up that are not present in your soil. So they're doing a good job.
Oh,
So
that is such a good tip, because I was just out there weeding the other day just thinking this is just an ongoing job that's killing me. So
yes,
that's
yes,
great to know.
yes, and the same with your lawn. Don't cut it too long. Just leave the clippings on so it's covered all the time.
Yeah.
And so if you cut your lawn, I don't know whether you can see, cut your lawn like people love it, like a bowling green.
Yeah.
The roots also are very restricted underneath, so they actually don't go long. They can't get the water. So it's just another small tip, to keep the ground covered as much as you can. When you can pull up the weeds if you don't like them, but just put them back on the soil so the minerals that they've brought up will start balancing your soil out.
Beautiful. So moving on from that, what's our next step?
Your next step is to look up farmers markets, and they're well advertised now, so there's bound to be one in your area where you can go visit, talk to the grower, find out. A lot of them are very cagey if they are using chemicals. You have to dig a bit deeper than just saying, do you use chemicals?
Right.
And sometimes they don't know what you're talking about when you ask that question too. So just dig deep and find out how they're growing their fruit and vegetables or meat. Quite a lot of farmers take their meat to market.
Yeah.
And the other thing is to go online and look for what's called a community CSA. I always forget what it is. Anyway, it's a community organisation where you can buy shares with a local farmer who's growing food. And sometimes farmers get together in a co-op, and you pay a certain amount every week to get a box of whatever's being produced on the farm. Some farms deliver, some you go and get food. And you mightn't always get the food you want, but you're actually supporting the farmer by giving him a regular income. It might be $30 a week, it might be $50 a week. The farmer then knows that he's going to survive because you're giving him a regular payment for whatever he's produced. And we actually did film a man from America, Farmer John, who was traveling around the world, and he started a community organisation out of Chicago, and he had enough money to not be on his farm for a year, and he was going around the world with this film that had been made. And he also had people in the co-op who said, well, we need more land, so they bought the land on his behalf. So it's a lovely story of people working with a farmer and sort of, they go and help on the farm. They're all different sorts of things, but it basically is working with the farmer.
I love that story. And I love that concept. And
yes.
I'll find out different ways that you can do that, because I've been wanting to look into that myself, and I haven't been able to find anywhere for co-ops as yet. But
yeah. Well, there's quite a few, and if you're stuck, let me know, because I can put you onto some. Like there's the one down at Wilson's Prom, and I think there's about 17 growers, so they cover a lot of different food. But the girl who actually organises it says she sold out of her meat supply for 16 years.
Wow, that's fantastic. So we can really make a difference by voting with where we send our money and who we're supporting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that a lot of farmers are committing suicide here in Australia. You don't hear about it, but they're so depressed particularly at the moment, there's a big drought up north, and they're really relying on, just them being told they're doing a good job,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so if you're aware of things like that, you could probably find something online where you can go and support those people. And also the banks that's the other problem, Jen, is the banks. I know one of the big banks, if a farmer puts his plan in for what he's going to do that year, if he's not using chemicals, they'll say, we're not giving you the loan. So they're having a big say in, stopping farmers actually going down the track they'd like to do, because they know, the ones that are aware of regenerative farming, that then they don't want to use chemicals.
Oh, that makes it so hard.
Yeah. It's terrible. So, there is some gloom about the realities of farming at the moment when you've got big industry really pushing the corporations who are really only wanting to push that so they can keep their little wheel going of the money going in the chemicals. They also happen to be pharmaceutical companies. They're on both sides of the fence. So they're selling the fertilisers. The fertilisers are making people sick, and then they're selling the drugs for the people to supposedly get better.
Yeah, and they're the ones with all the big money who are who can suppress this. Yeah.
Yes. So that's a big problem, but that's slowly being broken. We filmed Andre Lou last week. Now, he's a person who wrote a book called Myths of Safe Pesticides. Mm-hmm. He was the world president of organic farming. He's a farmer up in Queensland. He came down to Victoria. We filmed him, and we'll be putting what he has to say about pesticides. But he's actually written a book called Poisoning Our Children. And if you really want to get the lowdown, just look up the book. It's called Poisoning Our Children.
Yeah.
And I think it's $25 or something. And we're thinking we might get some copies as well. But people could email us if they're just helen@farmingsecrets.com if you want more information. But, that's I've just come from that, and that's why I'm so aware of what's going on. He's just gone to Paris to talk to one of the big chemical companies because he knows they won't stop. They're making too much money. And he's trying to talk to them about how they can turn the ship around and start selling the natural fertilisers, at least get off this chemical bandwagon and save their face. So their concern is shareholders and money.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, our well-being is well down the list. So that's just another reality of what's going on. And people are probably aware of what's happening with medicine and doctors, and they're trying to stop selling vitamins and things. This is how far it's gone.
Yeah.
Because people have become very, very aware that you don't want to band-aid a situation. You actually want to get to the cause of a problem and fix it, not band-aid it all the time.
Yeah. So I'm so glad that it's growing. More and more people are becoming more aware of this and wanting to make a change and make a difference.
Yes, it is. It's fantastic. It's very, very encouraging. Yeah. And we're thrilled with the response we get now, because we get a lot of emails come in thanking us for what we're doing. And that's really lovely.
That's fantastic, isn't it? That must be really rewarding when you actually see that and see the difference that it's making.
It is. Yeah. So, because you've got a lot of, even online, you need to realise there's a lot of fake news. These big companies, one of the people who, Dr. Martin Stapper, he was working for the CSIRO, and they said, well, you can't talk about non-GM, otherwise you'll have to leave. So he left. But at that stage, they were paying $500 for someone like him to make comment about how great GM was.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's scary.
A lot of money out there just with this saying it's fine, there's no findings, there's nothing wrong with any of these things, and it's actually a lie.
Wow.
There's a lot of things wrong.
Well,
and even if...
Sorry, yeah.
Sorry.
No, continue.
Yeah, even if it's like what they call NPK fertilizer, putting nitrogen, potassium, calcium back in the soil, they're salt-based fertilizers. So, and the plant can't, it's like putting you on a drip and saying, here's your food for the day.
Right.
It totally bypasses how a plant functions.
Yeah.
And if people understood even these little things, they wouldn't want to eat that food.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's not complex, it's not nutrient dense. So, but you'd be pleased to know that we're working with a man who has got a little machine he's making at the moment, a scanner. And very soon you'll be able to go to the supermarket and scan whatever you want to buy and it'll tell you what's in it. It'll
Oh.
tell you how much calcium and all this sort of thing. It's just brilliant.
So you'll scan the fresh produce? Really?
Yeah,
That sounds incredible.
I know.
Wow. So it'll tell you the nutrients. Can it tell you, give you any idea of pesticides and things like that as well?
Yes,
Yeah, the
yes,
whole lot.
yes, the whole thing.
Wow, that's exciting. That's cutting edge
Yes,
technology right there.
I know. It's fantastic. So, if
Wow.
someone wants to know about that, the company that started it was scio.com.
Yeah. Okay.
It's an Israeli company. They measure about 9 fruit and vegetables, but you'd get an idea of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's really, I'm just so excited about it because my friend Chris is going to make them here
Yeah.
and they'll read through plastic and everything,
Oh,
and they
wow.
just hook up with your smartphone
Yep.
and you'll have a whole chart in your smartphone and to carbohydrates, all of that sort of thing.
Gee, that's fantastic. And that's what people want to know. So,
I
what a
think
great
they do.
invention.
I
Yeah.
think they do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
how
So
exciting. There's so much going on. So I just really thought it was important that we had a chat and we could spread the word on what we can do as consumers. So I'm really happy that I've got some great tips on what we can do as well. With your website, is there anything for the layperson like me on that, or is it more for farmers, all those courses?
no. There's actually people have fun doing this. I actually don't quite know how you get to it. Um, we've got to revamp our website, but if you go on our website, farmingsecrets.com, there's a little email thing that you can fill in and it'll tell you the 10 must-dos for farming. And there's also a webinar you can listen to. It's all out of date. It's a bit dreary. I'm embarrassed to tell you, but anyway, that's how it is. But somehow when people get onto that, there is a do-it-yourself soil test and it's observation one. And it's
Okay.
so
Yeah.
you could go up with your kids and
Yeah.
dig a hole and see how many live things are in your little block of soil.
Hmm.
Like people get a hoop or they get a piece of wire and they just throw it on a piece. So you don't select what it is,
Yeah.
but you can't tell how many plants are there, how many bugs you find. And then you get a pipe and you pour water in it and see how long it takes for the water to go into the soil. And you stick a wire in to see if there's what's called a compaction layer, which means the plant's roots go down and go like this. So it's a fun thing and kids actually really like it. And then you can do your gardening for 6 months and then go and do it again, having, if you've done a bit of remediation with your soil,
Yeah.
because you can add kelp and seaweed. And another thing you can do is start a worm farm.
Oh, I know. We haven't even got into the worm.
No,
And
no.
again, with kids, another great thing to do with kids too.
They love it. And
Yeah.
what we've got, we really advise, not the plastic things because the
No.
worms don't like that, just 4 sides of a wooden box with a bit of air between the slats.
Hmm.
It's called a never fill bin and you just chuck everything in and the worms will feed. You just get some worms from, well, we can give people worms. They really do multiply very quickly.
Yeah.
Find someone who's got some worms, but they need to be compost worms,
Yeah.
and have them in your bin. And at the bottom, all the vermicast comes. That's what you want for your compost. And what you can do is collect that, and you can put that straight on, or you can put it in a bucket of water and swirl it around to make a worm compost tea. So we do have, on our blog, I think we've got stuff about that.
Yes, I did see some worm farming stuff on that.
Yes. So we really want to help people. So if they don't find something, they can let us know.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I could keep talking. There's so much I want to keep asking you, but we need to wind up. But I was going to ask if we're thinking we can't afford to buy organics all the time. I know that there's a, dirty dozen or something that they say the best things to buy, the best aren't. Like, could you just tell me, like, if we were just to buy a few things organic to start, what would be the most important things to buy, you think?
Okay,
for organic.
I'd like to revise your dirty dozen. That's the dirty 30 now.
Oh, is it? Now, is the dirty 30 the good ones to buy or the bad ones to buy?
They're the ones to avoid.
To avoid,
yes.
Okay.
Yes, so when you think about it, like strawberries, they sit on the ground and they get, they just soak up the chemicals. They would have to be one of the worst things to buy, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Potatoes, anything that's growing in the soil like that very easily absorbs the chemicals. I'm just trying to think. Some, like avocados and things, don't get so much spraying. Mm-hmm. I probably have to find the link for you, Ginny, because I don't. We're very, very, very lucky. We've got a biodynamic organic shop 5 minutes away. It's a wholesale place.
Oh, you're lucky.
We just buy there, so I'm not really aware of what I have to avoid.
Yeah. But that makes sense, though, doesn't it? Things that are very close to the ground and will absorb spray if they've got that spray there on the ground as well. Yeah.
I mean, I know apples. I talked to an apple orchardist once and I said, have you got sprays on your apple? He said the apple people who have their own inspection board, they came round every week when the apples were forming and just sprayed if there was any sign of anything going wrong. So apples get a lot of sprays. I mean, you wouldn't think it, but they do.
Right.
I'm sorry, I just haven't got it at my fingertips.
No, that's fine, because what I'll do is again in the show notes, I'll put a link to some of those ones as well. And I mean, that's the other thing too. You can clean your apple with some vinegar or soak it with a bit of vinegar, but again, that'll only get rid of a tiny amount of it because it's all absorbed into the apples or into whatever fruit it is.
That's the stupidity of it all.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like if you're growing to start with, if you're growing in that soil that's got the chemicals on it, the plant just can't take up the wide range of complex nutrients to start with. So it wouldn't matter whether you sprayed it afterwards or whatever. It's just never going to have that nutrient density, which is what you want.
Yeah.
And far better value for you to buy one apple than 5 apples, really.
Yeah.
But, it's hard to get people to think like that because everything looks so delicious.
So perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, Helen, it's been so lovely to talk with you tonight, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. And
my pleasure.
I am sure that we will be checking out the website, and you've got a great Facebook group as well, which I'm part of.
Oh,
and
yes.
I love it because it's not just for farmers. You post some really interesting stuff that anyone who's interested in where their food is coming from should be, aware of.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah,
so
that's
tell people about that.
Yeah, just Farm Secrets. If you just put in farming secrets into the search in Facebook, that comes up. So
it's actually it's the group. You have to look up the group thing. It's Farming Secrets Network.
Yeah,
under
Farming Secrets
Facebook
Network. Okay,
Facebook
beautiful.
Groups. Yeah.
And,
good. I'm glad you like it.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. The stuff that you put out there is so interesting. So thank you.
Oh, good. Oh, great.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I wish you and Hugo the best of luck with your work. And it sounds like you're doing some incredible jobs, meeting some inspirational farmers along the way and teaching people like us about consumers, about better ways to live. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Well, thank you very, very much for inviting me and your interest, because you sort of forget that you're doing quite a lot of stuff. So thank you, Jen.